Hello, dear listeners. Tonight, prepare yourselves for an extraordinary journey through time in the depths of the ocean. Take a deep breath, let your bodies settle into the safety of your modern homes, and allow your minds to sail with me to a lost age in the depths of memory's seas. If you're settling into sleep at this very moment, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely appreciate these journeys through history. Drop a comment letting us know where you're listening from and what time it is there now. I love knowing from all corners of the world where people are embarking on these nighttime adventures with us. Now, dim the lights, adjust your pillows, and imagine yourselves gently floating in the crystal clear waters of the Mediterranean over 12,000 years ago. You're about to witness the final day of glory of the most magnificent civilization that ever flourished on Earth, Atlantis. It's dawn in Atlantis, and the sun rises behind the sacred mountains like an incandescent jewel, painting the sky in coral and gold. The air is perfumed with the aroma of lotus flowers growing in hanging gardens, mixed with the salty breeze that carries the promise of another day in this extraordinary civilization. You can feel the comforting humidity on your skin, as if the ocean itself were whispering ancient secrets in your ears. The city awakens slowly around you, built in concentric circles of white marble and blue crystal, each ring connected by channels of crystal clear water flowing with the precision of a cosmic clock. The crystal towers capture the first light of day and reflect it in dancing rainbows that play on the waters, creating a spectacle of colors that makes the heart race with pure beauty. You are an inhabitant of Atlantis, one of the Atlanteans who lived in this submerged metropolis of marble and crystal. Your bare feet touch the floor of polished precious stones as you walk through shaded avenues by trees whose leaves seem to capture and store sunlight. The sound of flowing water is a constant symphony, for the entire city was built following the sacred principles of harmony between the elements. This isn't just another ancient city. Atlantis is the cradle of knowledge that our modern civilization still tries to understand. Here, technology and spirituality danced together in perfect harmony, creating a society where the impossible was every day, and the everyday was sacred. You open your eyes this Atlantean morning, and immediately notice how the architecture around you seems to pulse with its own life. The walls of your residence are made of translucent marble that allows light to flow through it like golden honey, creating a soft luminosity that never hurts the eyes. There's no need for torches or candles. The very building materials were chosen by Atlantean master architects to channel natural luminous energy. Each stone was cut following sacred mathematical proportions that the Atlanteans discovered by studying patterns in seashells, spirals of distant galaxies, and rhythms of beating hearts. Quirky tidbit: Atlantis builders never used metal tools to cut their precious stones. They developed a technique using specific sound frequencies that made stones separate naturally along their crystalline force lines. The floor beneath your feet is a mosaic of agates, quartz, and jade arranged following a pattern that replicates the Pleiades constellation. Each step you take activates a subtle resonance that connects with terrestrial frequencies, keeping your body in harmony with the natural rhythms of the planet. It's like walking on a giant musical instrument, where each movement creates a silent but deeply felt note. Your home's windows aren't made of glass, but rather natural crystals cut into thin sheets that filter sunlight in specific ways. During dawn, they tint the environment with rosy tones that stimulate creative energy. At midday, the light becomes golden, promoting mental clarity. And at dusk, the crystals emit a blue-green luminosity that prepares the mind for the prophetic dreams that were so common among Atlanteans. You head to the balcony and can contemplate the magnitude of the city stretching before your eyes. Atlantis was built following a design of concentric circles, each protected by walls of different precious materials. The outermost circle was surrounded by pure gold, the middle one by silver, and the sacred center by a special alloy of copper and zinc that the Atlanteans called orichalcum, a metal that shone with its own light and never deteriorated. Between each circle, water channels flow in perfect geometric patterns. These aren't simply transportation routes, but energetic arteries that distribute telluric forces throughout the city. The water was channeled from sacred springs at the island's center, passing through a series of crystal chambers that purified and energized it with healing properties. You breathe deeply the morning air, feeling how it's naturally ionized by countless waterfalls descending from towers in harmonious cascades. Each breath fills your lungs not just with oxygen, but with a vitality that makes every cell in your body vibrate with renewed energy. The Atlanteans discovered that architecture could be used to create bioelectric fields that maintained perfect health for all inhabitants. The towers rising toward the sky weren't built just to impress, but to function as cosmic antennas. Each was positioned following precise astronomical alignments, capturing and focusing energies from specific constellations. During certain times of the year, these towers would light up with natural luminous phenomena, creating a spectacle that could be seen hundreds of kilometers away. Joke number 1. If the Atlanteans had charged admission to see their architecture, they would have broken the first banking system in history, but fortunately, they considered beauty a birthright of every living being. The city's ambient sound was also part of its architecture. The channels were designed to create different musical tones as water flowed through them, resulting in a constant urban symphony that kept all inhabitants in balanced mental states. It's like living inside a giant musical temple, where every movement of water, every breeze passing through towers, every step on crystal streets, contributes to a harmonic composition that never repeats. As you observe this architectural marvel surrounding you, you begin to understand that Atlantis wasn't just a city, it was a living organism, breathing in synchrony with Earth's cycles, the moon's, and distant stars. Every element had been carefully planned to create an environment where human consciousness could flourish to its highest potentials. As the sun continues its ascent, you begin to notice other inhabitants of Atlantis emerging for their daily activities. The Atlanteans have an appearance that combines human beauty with an almost ethereal quality. Their eyes shine with profound intelligence, and their movements possess a natural grace that suggests an intimate connection with nature's forces. Atlantean clothing is made of fibers cultivated in special gardens, where plants were genetically enhanced through techniques combining advanced agriculture with spiritual knowledge. The fabrics subtly change color according to daylight and the wearer's emotions, creating a subtle rainbow of personal expression that makes each person unique. You follow the flow of people toward the city center, walking along an avenue lined by trees that were carefully modified to produce fruits with perfect nutritional properties. Each tree is a work of art in natural genetic engineering, developed by Atlantean botanists who understood plant genetic codes as intuitively as we understand our own emotions. The aroma emanating from these trees is intoxicating, a mixture of cherry blossoms, wild vanilla, and something indefinable that immediately elevates the spirit. The Atlanteans discovered that certain combinations of aromas could activate specific brain regions, promoting states of expanded consciousness, enhanced creativity, or deep relaxation as needed. As you walk, you can observe groups of Atlantean children playing in hanging gardens. Their games aren't just fun, but sophisticated educational systems that simultaneously develop physical, mental, and psychic skills. One child is levitating small objects through mental concentration, while another is conversing telepathically with dolphins in a nearby fountain. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans developed an educational system where children learned mathematics through music, history through shared lucid dreams, and natural sciences through direct communication with plants and animals. They believed knowledge should flow naturally through pleasurable experiences, not through forced memorization. You arrive at a circular plaza, where a market is forming, but this isn't like markets we know. Here, there's no money or bartering. The Atlanteans developed a system based on voluntary contribution and natural reciprocity. Each person offers what they produce or know how to do, and receives what they need, trusting in the natural abundance that their harmonious society created. An artist is creating sculptures that form themselves in the air through energy field manipulation, molding solidified light into forms that tell ancestral stories. Next to him, a healer is preparing medicines that glow softly, combining plant essences with specific sound frequencies that potentiate healing effects. The market's sound is a symphony of melodious voices. For the Atlanteans developed their language to incorporate musical tones that carry emotional and energetic meanings. Each phrase is like a small song, and entire conversations flow like impromptu musical compositions that are as beautiful to hear as they are informative. You stop near a fountain where water dances in complex geometric patterns, apparently defying gravity. This is one of the city's many energy fountains, where water is charged with specific frequencies that transform it into a conductor of subtle energy. The Atlanteans learned to use these energized waters for everything from irrigating plants to charging their personal crystals. A female Atlantean approaches the fountain carrying a pear-sized crystal. She holds the crystal near the dancing water, and you can see small blue lightning bolts passing from water to crystal. She smiles and explains telepathically that she's charging her personal communication crystal, which connects her with family members living in other Atlantean cities scattered around the world. Joke number 2. If the Atlanteans had invented social networks, they would have worked through telepathic crystals. Imagine explaining to them that we use small screens to send written messages instead of direct thoughts. The aroma of food being prepared attracts your attention to an area of the market where Atlantean cooks are creating meals that are both art and nutrition. They don't just combine flavors, but vibrational frequencies that make each meal an experience of healing and spiritual elevation. The food glows subtly with vital energy that can be seen by trained eyes. You taste a fruit offered by a kind merchant. Its flavor is indescribable, as if it were concentrated essence of pure joy, with notes reminiscent of golden honey, rose petals, and the freshness of air after a tropical storm. The fruit doesn't just satisfy physical hunger, but also elevates emotional state and clarifies mental perception. As the morning advances, you realize that daily life in Atlantis is a constant dance between practical and sacred. Every activity, from the simplest household task to the most elaborate ceremonies, is performed with awareness of its connection to greater cosmic rhythms. As the day progresses, you're invited to visit one of the most impressive structures of Atlantis, the Temple of Master Crystals. This pyramidal construction rises in the city center like a beacon of crystalline light, its facets capturing and reflecting not just sunlight, but also invisible energies from the cosmos. As you approach the temple, you feel a subtle vibration that seems to emanate from the very stones of the floor. The Crystal Temple was built over a convergence point of terrestrial force lines, where natural energies of the planet concentrate like invisible rivers of power. The Atlanteans learned to detect and map these energy lines, building their most important structures at points where they cross. The temple doors are made of a single crystal, cut from a formation that took thousands of years to grow in sacred caves beneath the island. This crystal is translucent, but with a quality that makes objects on the other side seem to exist in a slightly different dimension, as if you were looking through a portal between worlds. A temple guardian, an elderly Atlantean whose eyes shine with wisdom accumulated through centuries of life, receives you with a warm smile. In Atlantis, the wise lived much beyond normal lifetime through techniques combining use of energized crystals with advanced spiritual practices. This elder explains he's lived for over 400 years, maintaining his vitality through perfect harmony between body, mind, and spirit. He leads you through corridors where walls are covered by crystals of different types and sizes, each resonating with a specific frequency. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that different crystals could store different types of information. Rose quartz for emotional memories, amethyst for spiritual knowledge, and citrine for practical and technical data. Their libraries were crystal galleries where knowledge was accessed through mental tuning. You arrive at the temple's central chamber, and your breathing slows before the majesty of what you find there. In the center of the room hangs a house-sized crystal, perfectly transparent, slowly spinning in the air without any visible support. This is Atlantis' master crystal, the technological heart of the entire civilization. The crystal pulses with an interior light that seems to have its own life, subtly changing color as it responds to the city's energy needs. Sometimes it glows with deep blue, channeling healing energies to the city's hospitals. Other times it emits vibrant gold, amplifying mental capacities of students and inventors. And during night, its silver luminosity facilitates prophetic dreams for the entire population. The Guardian explains that the Master Crystal is both an energy source and a biological computer, capable of processing information on a scale our modern technology still can't fully understand. It connects telepathically with smaller crystals spread throughout the city, creating a communication and energy distribution network that works instantly across any distance. Through this crystal network, the Atlanteans could communicate instantly with other Atlantean civilizations on distant continents. The Guardian mentions casually that Atlantean colonies existed in what we now call Egypt, Peru, Tibet, and even on islands now submerged in the Pacific Ocean. You're invited to approach a smaller crystal, fist-sized, mounted on a gold pedestal. The Guardian instructs you to place your hands near the crystal and open your mind. Immediately, you feel a wave of information flowing directly into your consciousness, not words or images, but pure knowledge that instantly integrates into your understanding. Joke number 3. If the Atlanteans had had access to the internet, they probably would have found our worldwide network very primitive compared to their crystals that transferred knowledge directly, from mind to mind, without need for passwords or constant updates. Through this crystalline connection, you learn that the Atlanteans used crystals, not just for energy and communication, but also for healing, transportation, agriculture, and even climate influence. Specialized crystals could accelerate plant growth, purify large volumes of water, or create protective force fields around important areas. Transportation in Atlantis was revolutionary vehicles that floated silently through the city's channels, propelled by crystals that interacted with Earth's magnetic force lines. These vehicles produced no pollution or noise, gliding smoothly like leaves carried by a gentle breeze. For long journeys, the Atlanteans developed vessels that could travel both over and under ocean waters, using crystals that created breathable air bubbles and energy fields that repelled water pressure. These ships could cross entire oceans in a matter of days, allowing Atlantean civilization to spread throughout the entire world. The Guardian reveals that the most advanced crystals were considered living beings by the Atlanteans, crystalline entities that had developed a form of consciousness through millions of years of slow growth. These ancient crystals served as counselors and guardians of wisdom, being consulted in the civilization's most important decisions. As you absorb this crystalline knowledge, you begin to understand that Atlantean technology wasn't based on domination of nature, but on partnership with it. Each innovation was developed in harmony with natural rhythms, respecting and amplifying forces already present in the universe instead of trying to subjugate them. The master crystal's light pulses more intensely for a moment, as if recognizing your presence and blessing your understanding. You feel a deep peace knowing that, even though this civilization disappeared millennia ago, the knowledge and wisdom it developed continue existing, encoded in crystals that still today emerge from Earth for those who know how to tune into their frequencies. When the sun reaches its zenith, you're led to an even more sacred part of the temple complex, the Gardens of Contemplation, where Atlantean spirituality flourishes in all its depth. These gardens aren't just spaces of beauty, but living laboratories where consciousness is cultivated like a rare and precious plant. The plants here don't grow in common soil, but in crystalline substrates that amplify their natural properties. Each garden is dedicated to developing a specific aspect of human consciousness, one for compassion, another for wisdom, a third for intuition, and so on. The Atlanteans discovered that certain plants, when cultivated in resonance with specific crystals, could facilitate expanded states of consciousness. An Atlantean priestess, dressed in fabrics that seem woven from moonified light, receives you in the gardens. Her eyes possess a quality suggesting she sees far beyond physical reality in Atlantis. Spiritual leaders were those who had developed perceptions spanning multiple dimensions of existence simultaneously. She explains that Atlantean spirituality was based on understanding that all existence is a single consciousness expressing itself through infinite forms. For the Atlanteans, there was no separation between science and spirituality. Between technology and religion, everything was seen as different aspects of a unified truth. The temple's center of the gardens is a structure that defies the laws of physics we know. Its walls seem made of solidified light, and the ceiling is a transparent dome that reveals not the blue sky, but a starry cosmos that remains visible even during day. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans developed building materials that could become transparent to certain light frequencies, allowing them to see through physical dimensions to contemplate spiritual realities existing beyond the material world. Inside the temple, groups of Atlanteans are engaged in meditative practices that combine rhythmic breathing, graceful movement, and harmonization with crystalline frequencies. It's not passive meditation, but an active dance with cosmic energies, where each participant becomes a conscious instrument in the universal symphony. The priestess invites you to participate in a solar harmonization ritual. The participants form concentric circles around a central crystal, each person tuned to a specific frequency that complements the others. As the ritual progresses, you feel your individual consciousness expanding and merging into a unified group consciousness. The ritual has no words in the sense we know. Communication happens through direct resonance between participants' minds and hearts. You experience a state where thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are instantly shared among everyone present, creating a unity experience that transcends anything possible through common language. During this expanded state, you perceive that the Atlanteans didn't worship external gods, but recognized divinity, as the fundamental essence of existence, expressed through every living being, every crystal, every drop of water, every ray of sunlight. Their spirituality was a constant celebration of this divine presence in all things. The priestess guides the group through a visionary experience where you can perceive lines of light connecting all forms of life, from smallest bacteria to largest whales, from garden plants to stars in the sky. This perception of universal interconnectivity was the basis of all Atlantean ethics and morality. Joke number 1. If the Atlanteans had had access to our philosophical debates about life's meaning, they probably would have offered a crystal harmonization session and said, "Experience the answer directly, instead of discussing it eternally." As the ritual continues, you begin to understand that the Atlanteans saw physical life as a school for consciousness development. Each experience, each challenge, each joy was an opportunity to expand perception and develop capacities that transcended apparent limitations of physical form. They believed consciousness was immortal, and each individual was an eternal being temporarily focused in a specific physical experience. Death wasn't seen as an end, but as a graduation to higher levels of existence. This understanding completely removed fear of death, and allowed them to live with a freedom and joy our modern society rarely experiences. Spiritual education in Atlantis began from birth, with children being exposed to specific energy fields that facilitated development of natural psychic capacities. Telepathy, clairvoyance, and communication with other life forms were considered normal skills that everyone should develop, like learning to read or write in our society. Atlantis's temples served as multidimensional healing centers, where treatments were offered not just for physical body, but for subtle energy bodies that Atlanteans knew existed around and through the material body. Diseases were seen as energy disharmonies that could be corrected through application of specific frequencies of sound, light, and crystalline energy. During special ceremonies, groups of Atlanteans gathered to channel healing energy for the entire planet, sending waves of harmony and balance through terrestrial force lines to promote health of all ecosystems. They saw themselves as cosmic gardeners, responsible for maintaining Earth's energetic well-being. As the solar harmonization ritual comes to an end, you feel a deep peace and mental clarity that will remain with you for a long time. The priestess smiles and explains that this is just a small sample of spiritual capacities all Atlanteans naturally developed when living in harmony with universal laws. As afternoon develops, you're taken to explore Atlantis's social structure, a civilization that achieved something humanity still seeks, a society where prosperity, wisdom, and harmony coexist perfectly. The Atlantean governmental system wasn't based on power over others, but on service to community and cosmic responsibility. Atlantis was governed by 10 kings who directly descended from Poseidon, the ocean god who had established civilization by uniting with the mortal woman from the original island. Each king governed a specific territory, but important decisions were made in council, where unanimity was sought through group meditation and consultation with oracular crystals. These kings weren't rulers in the sense we know, but spiritual guardians who had dedicated their lives to developing wisdom and serving common good. To be chosen as leader in Atlantis, it was necessary to demonstrate not just administrative competence, but also purity of intention and capacity to perceive long-term consequences of each decision. The royal palace you visit is a complex of hanging gardens and crystalline pavilions where governmental decisions are made in an environment of natural beauty and energetic harmony. There are no closed rooms or shadowy corridors. All political discussion happens in open spaces, bathed by natural light and perfumed by flowers that promote mental clarity and pure intentions. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans never made important decisions without first consulting the effects those decisions would have 7 generations in the future. They developed crystalline computers that could calculate complex ramifications of each action through time, ensuring their choices promoted civilization's long-term well-being. The Atlantean economic system was based on deep understanding of natural abundance. Instead of artificial scarcity created by competition, the Atlanteans had developed technologies that could transform basic matter into any necessary resource. Through manipulation of atomic structures using specific crystalline frequencies, they could literally transform common earth into gold, water into fuel, or air into food. This technological abundance had completely eliminated poverty, hunger, and need for hard work. Each Atlantean was free to pursue their natural talents and contribute to society through their personal passion. Artists created beauty, scientists explored mysteries, healers facilitated well-being, and everyone did what they loved because there was no economic pressure forcing choices based on survival. You visit an Atlantean school where children of different ages learn together in open gardens under orientation of masters who specialize in awakening unique potentials. There are no standardized curricula or competitive tests. Each child is recognized as a unique being with specific talents that must be discovered and cultivated. The Atlantean educational system recognized that each person is born with a specific mission for this life, and education's role was to help each individual discover and develop this mission. Through techniques combining personal aura analysis, consultation with oracular crystals, and observation of natural talents, educators could identify each child's ideal development path. Joke number 2. If the Atlanteans had had access to our modern educational systems, they probably would have been perplexed by the idea of forcing all children to learn the same things at the same pace, like trying to make all flowers grow the same way. Justice in Atlantis wasn't based on punishment, but on restoration of harmony. When conflicts arose, involved parties were taken to special chambers where crystals amplified empathy, allowing each person to directly experience others' emotions and perspectives. This experience of amplified empathy usually resolved conflicts instantly, as it became impossible to maintain anger or resentment when one could feel the suffering those feelings caused. For more serious transgressions against community harmony, the Atlanteans used energy healing techniques that treated deep psychological causes of destructive behavior. They understood that all negative behavior arose from unhealed wounds in the soul, and focused on healing those wounds instead of simply punishing symptoms. The concept of private property existed in Atlantis, but was balanced by deep understanding of community responsibility. Each person was temporary guardian of resources that should be used for everyone's benefit. Accumulating resources beyond personal needs was seen as a sign of spiritual imbalance requiring healing. Atlantean cities were designed as living organisms where each part contributed to the whole's well-being. There were no poor or rich areas, polluted or privileged ones. All urban infrastructure was harmoniously distributed to ensure everyone had equal access to beauty, resources, and personal growth opportunities. Public transportation in Atlantis consisted of crystalline platforms that floated through magnetic energy tunnels, allowing instant travel between any point in the city. These tunnels also served as channels for distributing energy, purified air, and even therapeutic music that kept all citizens in balanced emotional states. Public health was maintained through a network of crystalline towers that emitted frequencies strengthening all inhabitants' immune systems. Diseases were extremely rare in Atlantis, not just due to advanced medical technology, but because the entire society was structured to promote physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. As you explore this perfect society, you begin to understand that Atlantean harmony wasn't result of external rules or control, but of elevation of each citizen's individual consciousness. When people live in elevated states of consciousness, destructive behaviors simply don't arise because it becomes obvious that harming others is harming oneself. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, you're led to the famous crystal gardens of Atlantis. Vast agricultural areas demonstrating perfect integration between advanced technology and natural wisdom. These aren't simply farms, but carefully orchestrated ecosystems where plants, crystals, and cosmic energy dance together in a symphony of abundance. Plants here grow at a speed that defies everything we know about agriculture. A fruit tree can pass from seed to maturity in a matter of weeks, not through aggressive genetic manipulation, but through harmonization with natural growth frequencies discovered by Atlantean botanists. Each section of gardens is dedicated to a specific type of plant, but organization follows principles combining nutritional needs with energetic properties. Plants that complement each other energetically are cultivated together, creating natural force fields that potentiate growth and healing properties of each species. The soil isn't common earth, but a carefully prepared mixture of pulverized crystals, organic compounds rich in minerals, and substances the Atlanteans extracted from seawater through advanced alchemical processes. This crystalline soil keeps plants in constant communication with the city's energy networks, allowing them to respond instantly to population nutritional needs. An Atlantean master gardener, whose hands glow subtly with vital energy, demonstrates how they cultivate plants without physical tools. Through conscious projection of energy through palms, he can stimulate growth, direct fruit development, and even communicate directly with plant consciousness to understand their needs. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that plants cultivated with conscious love developed superior flavors and nutritional properties to those cultivated with only mechanical techniques. They instituted practices where each gardener developed personal relationships with their plants, talking to them daily and including them in their meditations. You observe trees producing fruits of impossible shapes and colors. Some are translucent, like crystals. Others change color as they ripen, and there are fruits that glow with their own light during night. These are creations of Atlantean botanists who learned to combine characteristics of multiple species in a single plant, creating foods that nourish not just the physical body, but also subtle energy bodies. The irrigation system is a work of art in itself. Liquid crystal channels a substance that flows like water, but maintains crystalline properties, transport not just water, but also specific nutritive frequencies for each plant type. Water is energized through crystalline towers that charge it with cosmic vitality before distributing it through the gardens. In some areas, you see hanging gardens that float in the air through manipulation of natural magnetic fields. These aerial platforms allow cultivation in multiple vertical layers, maximizing production in compact spaces while creating a landscape of surreal beauty where gardens float like green islands in the sky. Joke number 3. If the Atlanteans had seen our debates about organic versus transgenic agriculture, they probably would have suggested a third option: telepathic agriculture with plants that consciously evolve in partnership with their human caregivers. Animals in the gardens aren't domesticated in the sense we know, but conscious partners in the agricultural process. Multicolored birds with enhanced intelligence help in pollination, following specific patterns that optimize plant genetic diversity. Butterflies the size of small birds carry seeds between different garden sections, creating new genetic combinations under telepathic guidance from gardeners. There are special areas dedicated to cultivating medicinal plants that glow with visible auras corresponding to their healing properties. Plants for emotional healing emit soft blue light, herbs for mental clarity glow golden, and plants for physical energy pulse with vibrant green. Atlantean healers can diagnose diseases simply by observing how patients respond to different plant auras. Pest control is done through ecological harmonization instead of chemical substances. The Atlanteans developed specific sound frequencies that stimulate natural predators and create environments where pests simply can't thrive. The result is an ecosystem in perfect balance, where each life form has its place and function. You visit a crystalline greenhouse where advanced botanical experiments are being conducted. Here, Atlantean scientists are developing plants that can grow in extreme environments, some that thrive in salt water, others that absorb energy directly from moonlight, and even species that can survive in space, vacuum for future explorations of other planets. A particularly impressive discovery is a tree that produces fruits with different properties, depending on the needs of whoever approaches it. The tree can telepathically sense each person's nutritional or energetic deficiencies and adjust its fruit composition in real time to provide exactly what each individual needs to achieve perfect balance. The gardens also include meditation areas where specific plants were cultivated to emit frequencies facilitating altered states of consciousness. Sitting among these special plants allows Atlanteans to access superior dimensions of perception, receive creative inspirations, and communicate with intelligences from other planets. As you walk through these magical gardens, breathing air perfumed by 1,000 different fragrances, you begin to understand that Atlantean agriculture wasn't just about food production, but about conscious co-creation with nature to develop life forms increasingly perfect and beautiful. As day slowly transforms into night, you're taken to Atlantis' cosmic observatory, an impressive structure that serves not just to observe stars, but to actively communicate with civilizations from other worlds. This isn't passive astronomy, but intergalactic diplomacy, where Atlanteans maintain regular contact with their cosmic partners. The observatory tower rises to impossible heights, its crystalline structure capturing and focusing not just visible light, but also energy frequencies traveling between stars carrying messages from distant worlds. The tower's top is crowned by a gigantic crystal functioning simultaneously as telescope, transmitter, and receiver of interplanetary communications. An Atlantean astronomer, whose eyes shined with stellar reflections as if he had absorbed light from distant galaxies, receives you at the observatory. He explains that Atlanteans don't see humanity as isolated in the cosmos, but as part of a vast family of conscious civilizations spread across multiple galaxies. Communication with other civilizations doesn't happen through radio signals as our science imagines, but through direct transmission of consciousness, using crystals tuned to specific frequencies of different planets. Each inhabited world possesses a unique energetic signature, and Atlantean crystals can be calibrated to connect with these signatures. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that interplanetary communication works best during certain astrological configurations when energy fields between planets align naturally. They developed complex cosmic calendars, predicting the best moments to establish contact with specific civilizations. You're invited to witness a communication session with a civilization from the star system we know as the Pleiades. The astronomer places his hands on a table-sized crystal, and immediately three-dimensional holograms begin forming in the air, not images of alien beings, but visual representations of pure concepts being transmitted through space. The conversation that develops is fascinating. There are no words, but direct exchange of understanding about topics like spiritual development, harmonious technologies, and consciousness evolution. The Pleiadian beings are sharing knowledge about how civilizations can evolve without destroying their home planets. Wisdom that will tragically be ignored by Atlanteans in their final generations. During communication, you learn that Atlantis serves as a cosmic relay station, retransmitting messages between distant civilizations and serving as a meeting point for diplomats from different worlds. Some of Atlantis's most advanced technologies were developed through this intergalactic collaboration. The observatory also functions as a school where young Atlanteans learn about multidimensional cosmology. Students here don't just learn about physical astronomy, but also about spiritual hierarchies governing cosmic evolution, cycles of civilization, birth and death, and universal patterns repeating at all scales of existence. Joke number 1. If the Atlanteans had watched our science fiction movies about alien invasions, they probably would have laughed and offered to introduce some of their extraterrestrial friends who regularly came for dinner on Thursdays. Through communication crystals, you perceive fragments of conversations with other civilizations, aquatic beings from an oceanic planet sharing water purification techniques, crystalline masters from a mineral world teaching about gem properties we haven't discovered yet, and gaseous sages from planets without solid form transmitting philosophies about pure consciousness, nature. The Atlanteans learn that their civilization is part of a larger cosmic experiment where different types of conscious beings explore varied forms of evolution. Some worlds focus on technological development, others on spiritual evolution, and some, like Atlantis, try to balance both. Results of these experiments contribute to evolutionary growth of all cosmic consciousness. The observatory contains records of thousands of civilizations that have existed and disappeared throughout galactic history. The Atlanteans study these records to understand patterns leading to civilization success or destruction. Unfortunately, as you'll discover, this knowledge will be ignored when power lust begins corrupting Atlantean leaders. There's also communication with beings existing in purely energetic dimensions, entities that never had physical forms but possess vast wisdom about universal laws. These beings serve as cosmic counselors, offering guidance on how to navigate evolutionary growth challenges without losing spiritual balance. During certain times of year, the observatory hosts physical visitors from other worlds. Crystalline ships land in the complex gardens, bringing diplomats who participate in conferences about issues affecting multiple civilizations, like maintaining galactic ecological balance and preventing conflicts between different species. Records show that Atlantis's original founders came from another star system, establishing civilization as an experiment in integrating spiritual wisdom with technological power. The goal was creating a model other young civilizations could follow to avoid dangers that destroy most advanced societies. As night deepens and more stars become visible, the observatory crystal pulses with greater intensity, reflecting communications from dozens of different civilizations. You begin to perceive that the universe is alive with consciousness, a vast network of intelligences exploring infinite possibilities of existence. Atlantean night brings with it a magical transformation of the city. As crystalline lights spontaneously ignite, and the atmosphere fills with musical harmonies that seem to emanate from the very air, you're led to the arts district, where Atlantean creativity flourishes in forms transcending everything our modern imagination can conceive. For Atlanteans, art wasn't entertainment or decoration, but a sacred force capable of shaping reality through conscious manipulation of energetic frequencies. Each work of art was also a healing instrument, dimensional portal, or disguised technology capable of altering consciousness states of whoever observed it. The first studio you visit is dedicated to solid light sculpture. An Atlantean artist is literally molding light rays with his hands, transforming photons into solid matter through techniques combining creative visualization with energy field manipulation. The resulting sculpture glows with its own life, subtly changing form as it responds to observers' emotions. These light sculptures aren't static, they constantly evolve, growing and transforming over years or decades, developing increasing complexity like living beings. Some of the oldest sculptures in the district have become so complex they've developed a rudimentary form of consciousness, communicating with visitors through luminous patterns. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that sculptures created during specific emotional states permanently maintained those energetic qualities. Sculptures made with love radiated feelings of compassion. Those created during spiritual inspiration facilitated mystical experiences, and works molded during pure joy could cure depression instantly. In the music pavilion, you find composers working with instruments defying all physical logic. Crystal harps playing melodies that can be seen as dancing colors, flutes producing sounds capable of levitating objects, and drums creating rhythms, synchronizing heartbeats of everyone in a large surrounding area. Atlantean music wasn't just beautiful to hear, each composition was mathematically calculated to produce specific effects on human consciousness. There were songs healing specific diseases, others facilitating accelerated learning, and entire symphonies dedicated to inducing states of spiritual ecstasy or prophetic visions. Atlantean musicians could compose symphonies lasting months, with each movement synchronized with specific astronomical cycles. During these extended performances, the entire city transformed into a giant resonance chamber, where every building, every fountain, and every crystal contributed to total harmony. In Atlantean theater, there's no stage separate from audience. All architecture is dynamically redesigned for each performance through crystalline force fields. Walls flow like liquid, ceiling opens to reveal cosmic scenery, and floor can transform into oceans, forests, or alien landscapes. Joke number 2. If Atlanteans had seen our modern theaters with fixed chairs and static stages, they probably would have asked how the audience could participate in the story if physically separated from it. Atlantean actors don't just represent characters, they temporarily channel consciousnesses of historical or mythical beings, allowing figures from the past to live again during performances. This technique requires years of training in conscious mediumship and psychic protection. Stories presented aren't fiction in the common sense. They're dramatizations of events that really happened in other times, other worlds, or other dimensions. Watching an Atlantean play is literally witnessing real history being relived through specialized human channels. In the painting gallery, you discover that Atlantean pigments are made from liquid crystals that remain active even after drying. Each painting is a living portal to the realities it represents. Observers can literally enter painted landscapes through astral projection techniques assisted by crystalline pigments. There are paintings showing possible future events, created by artists with developed prophetic abilities. These works serve as warnings or inspirations, showing results of different choices civilization could make. Tragically, many of these paintings show Atlantis' future destruction. Warnings that will be ignored. Open-air dance gardens present performances where dancers' movements create visible energy patterns in the air, painting temporary artworks in three-dimensional space. These energy patterns have healing effects on audience, with different types of dance treating different types of imbalances. Atlantean dance isn't just physical movement, it's conscious manipulation of auric fields and subtle energies. Master dancers can use their movements to weave protective force fields around the city, channel healing energy to sick people, or open temporary portals between dimensions. In the center of Arts District, there's an amphitheater where collaborative performances involve hundreds of artists working simultaneously. Musicians, dancers, light sculptors, and astral painters create together total synesthetic experiences where sound, color, movement, and energy merge into a single multi-dimensional artwork. During these collaborative presentations, distinction between artists and audience completely disappears. Everyone present becomes co-creators, contributing their own creative energies to collective manifestation. Results are experiences transcending any individual art form. As you absorb creative magnificence around you, you begin to understand that art in Atlantis wasn't separate from daily life, but integrated into every aspect of existence. Each meal was artistically presented. Each garden was a masterpiece. Each conversation was a form of living poetry. As Atlantean night deepens and stars shine through the city's crystalline atmosphere, you're taken to one of the most sacred structures of the entire civilization, the Great Crystalline Library, where all Atlantean knowledge is preserved in forms transcending books or scrolls. This isn't a library in the sense we know, but a vast complex of crystal chambers where information is stored directly in molecular structures of specialized crystals. Each crystal can contain the equivalent of thousands of volumes of information, accessible instantly through mental tuning. The library's chief guardian is an ancient Atlantean who has lived for over 1,000 years, maintaining his vitality through techniques combining crystalline rejuvenation with advanced spiritual practices. His eyes shine with reflection of eons of accumulated wisdom, and his presence radiates deep peace coming from prolonged contact with pure knowledge. He explains that library crystals don't just store information, but also complete experiences of original discoverers. When someone accesses knowledge about botany, for example, they receive not just data, but also lived experience of walking through Atlantean gardens, feeling fragrances, and communicating telepathically with plants. The first chamber you visit is dedicated to galactic history, crystals containing records of thousands of civilizations that flourished and disappeared over millions of years. Lightly touching a fist-sized crystal, you're instantly flooded with images of impossible worlds, beings of indescribable forms, and technologies making Atlantean science seem primitive. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that traumatic knowledge like records of destroyed civilizations needed to be stored in special crystals filtering emotional impact, allowing information to be accessed without causing depression or hopelessness in those studying it. The Natural Sciences Chamber contains crystals storing not just theories, but also ability to directly perceive described phenomena. Accessing quantum physics knowledge allows temporarily seeing subatomic particles dancing, while studying astronomy grants temporary telescopic vision that can observe distant galaxies with naked eyes. In the Healing Arts section, crystals don't just teach medical techniques, but also temporarily transfer abilities of Atlantis's greatest healers. A student can literally experience having a master's hands, feeling how healing energy flows through fingers and automatically perceiving energetic imbalances in patients. Joke number 3. If Atlanteans had seen our modern universities where students spend years reading books to learn professions, they probably would have offered a 5-minute crystal that transferred an expert's entire experience directly to the brain. The prophecy chamber is the most solemn in the entire library. Here, visionary crystals contain records of possible futures calculated by generations of Atlantean prophets. Many of these crystals glow with pulsing red light, a warning they contain visions of destruction and catastrophe. The Guardian explains with sadness that prophetic crystals have consistently shown Atlantis's future destruction for decades. But political leaders have ignored these warnings, choosing to focus on power and expansion instead of spiritual correction. Prophecies show destruction will come not from external forces, but from internal imbalances caused by uncontrolled ambition. In the personal library, each Atlantean citizen possesses their own crystal where they record life experiences, personal discoveries, and spiritual insights. When an Atlantean dies, their personal crystal is integrated into the general library, allowing future generations to learn not just facts, but also lived wisdom. These personal crystals create a unique form of immortality. Though bodies perish, consciousnesses remain accessible through crystalline records. Students can literally converse with Atlanteans who lived thousands of years ago, receiving advice and teachings directly from their preserved personalities. The Lost Technologies section contains crystals with knowledge deliberately hidden because it was considered too dangerous for general use. Here are stored techniques for artificial life creation, temporal manipulation, and weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Knowledge only the wisest and most balanced can access. Access to these dangerous crystals requires approval from an elder, counsel and demonstration of intention purity through rigorous psychic tests. Tragically, in Atlantis's final generations, some corrupted leaders will force access to these technologies, directly contributing to civilization's destruction. One of the most fascinating sections is the Other Dimensions Library, where special crystals contain knowledge received from parallel realities, where history followed different paths. Here you can learn about alternative versions of Atlantis that avoided destruction, discovering which choices could have saved civilization. The Cosmic Master's Chamber preserves teachings received directly from beings who completely transcended physical existence. These crystals glow with pure golden light and contain wisdom about reality's fundamental nature, cosmic evolution purposes, and final destinies of all consciousness. As you explore this impossible library, you begin to understand that Atlantis developed a form of civilization where knowledge would never be lost. Every discovery, every insight, every experience was permanently preserved for all future generations' benefit. The Guardian mentions with hope that, even when Atlantis is destroyed, many of these knowledge crystals will survive, burying themselves deep in Earth to emerge in future times when humanity is ready to receive this wisdom again. Dawn slowly approaches, while you explore a fascinating aspect of Atlantean civilization our modern society still struggles to understand: how an economy can function when material abundance is so complete that concepts like poverty, hunger, or even mandatory work simply don't exist. The Atlantean economic system was based on revolutionary understanding. When advanced technology is combined with spiritual wisdom, artificial scarcity motivating most terrestrial economies becomes obsolete. The Atlanteans had transcended the need to compete for resources through development of technologies that could create any necessary material. At the Material Manifestation Center, you witness technology that made this abundance possible. Through conscious manipulation of quantum frequencies, using programmed crystals, Atlanteans could literally transform energy into matter following specific patterns. Common earth could be transmuted into gold, simple carbon reorganized into diamonds, and even food could be created directly from pure energy. This capacity wasn't just scientific, but also artistic and spiritual. Manifestation technicians were simultaneously scientists, artists, and mystics, combining precise knowledge of atomic structures with creative visualization and elevated consciousness states to materialize objects of perfect beauty and functionality. Quirky tidbit: the Atlanteans discovered that objects created through conscious transmutation maintained traces of their creator's emotions and intentions. Therefore, all material creations were made by technicians in states of love, joy, and dedication to common good, ensuring each object carried positive energies. The result of this material abundance was a society where nobody needed to work to survive, freeing the entire population to pursue their natural talents and passions. Instead of jobs motivated by economic necessity, Atlanteans had vocations based on love for what they did. Artists created beauty because they felt interior compulsion to express inspiration. Scientists explored mysteries because they were moved by natural curiosity. Healers dedicated themselves to medicine because they felt genuine compassion for suffering. This liberation from economic motivation resulted in levels of creativity and innovation never equaled in terrestrial history. The concept of private property existed, but was balanced by deep understanding of cosmic responsibility. Each person was seen as temporary guardian of resources that should be used for everyone's benefit. Accumulating beyond personal needs was considered symptom of spiritual imbalance. Joke number 1. If Atlanteans had visited one of our modern Black Fridays, with people fighting over discounted products, they probably would have thought they were observing some kind of primitive religious ritual dedicated to the god of artificial scarcity. Resource distribution system worked through crystalline networks that could automatically detect each citizen's needs and provide resources before they were even requested. If someone was developing interest in painting, art materials magically appeared in their residence. If a family was growing, additional spaces materialized organically. This need anticipation wasn't invasive, but based on harmonic attunement with natural rhythms of each person's growth and development. The crystalline system didn't control or judge, but simply responded to energies emanated by genuine desires and evolutionary needs. For more complex or specialized needs, Atlanteans developed manifestation. Circles, groups of people gathering to collaboratively create items or experiences requiring multiple specialties. These circles functioned like corporations, but motivated by creative joy instead of profit. Goods transportation was done through crystalline teleportation tunnels that could move objects instantly between any point in the city, or even between Atlantean cities on different continents. There were no trucks, cargo ships, or heavy infrastructure, just elegant energy networks moving materials like thoughts. Services like education, health, and entertainment were considered fundamental rights automatically provided by Atlantean social system. Nobody needed to pay for these services because they were seen as investments in entire civilization's elevation. The result was a society where money didn't exist, debt was unthinkable, and poverty was literally impossible. This abundance didn't create laziness or decadence, but freed creative energies on a scale, producing history's greatest scientific, artistic, and spiritual advances. Joke number 2. If modern economists had studied Atlantean system, they probably would have developed ulcers trying to understand how an economy can function without inflation, unemployment, or growth based on increasing consumption of finite resources. For massive projects like new city construction or revolutionary technology development, Atlanteans used manifestation assemblies, where hundreds or thousands of people focused their creative intentions simultaneously, materializing complex structures through coordinated collective visualization. These assemblies were festive events combining aspects of religious ceremony, artistic performance, and precision engineering. Participating in collective manifestation was considered one of life's greatest pleasures in Atlantis. The joy of co-creating reality with hundreds of harmonized minds. The system also included automatic recycling mechanisms where any object no longer needed was instantly transmuted back to pure energy, available for future creations. Waste was impossible because all matter was seen as temporarily condensed energy. As you contemplate this impossible economic system, you begin to understand that Atlanteans didn't just solve resource distribution problems, but completely transcended scarcity mentality, still dominating our modern civilization. When morning returns to Atlantis, bringing another day in this extraordinary civilization, you begin noticing subtle signs that not everything is well in Atlantean paradise. There's tension in the air that didn't exist the previous day, an energetic quality suggesting profound changes are approaching. In recent centuries, a gradual but ominous transformation has taken place in Atlantean leadership's heart. Descendants of original kings, who maintained direct connection with Poseidon, have progressively lost their divine heritage through generations of interbreeding with common human beings. With this dilution of divine blood also came deterioration of wisdom and compassion, characterizing first leaders. You observe meetings between some Atlantean kings where, for the first time in civilization's history, discussions are motivated by personal ambition instead of service to common good. Some leaders have begun seeing crystalline technologies not as tools for spiritual elevation, but as potential weapons for expanding their power over other nations. Quirky tidbit: the oracular crystals that always provided wise guidance to Atlantean leaders began emanating increasingly urgent warnings. But these warnings are being ignored by a generation of rulers preferring to hear only what confers their desires for expansion and dominion. In certain city sections, you notice constructions violating sacred architectural principles that always guided Atlantean development. Towers are being erected not to harmonize with cosmic energies, but to demonstrate power and intimidate potential enemies. These buildings emanate subtle discord, disturbing the city's energetic harmony. Some of Atlantis' most brilliant scientists have been secretly recruited to develop military applications of crystalline technologies, projects violating ethical codes always prohibiting use of sacred knowledge for destructive purposes. Hidden laboratories work on developing crystals that can be used as weapons. Society is dividing for first time in Atlantean history. One faction, led by wise elders, insists on maintaining spiritual principles that created civilization. Another faction, dominated by ambitious young leaders, argues Atlantis must use its superior power to govern and civilize the rest of the world. This division is being felt even in families, where wise parents observe with horror while their children embrace philosophies of Atlantean superiority and domination over other peoples. Education based on love and harmony is being questioned by a generation seeing compassion as weakness. Joke number 3. If modern family therapists had been available in Atlantis during this time, they would have had enough work to occupy several lifetimes trying to mediate conflicts between generations about appropriate use of technologies capable of destroying entire continents. In schools, some teachers began teaching theories of Atlantean supremacy, arguing their superior civilization has right and responsibility to govern inferior peoples. This poisoned education is creating a generation of young Atlanteans, seeing other human beings as subordinates instead of brothers. Communications with other cosmic civilizations have become tense, as alien ambassadors express concern about the direction Atlantis is taking. Some long-term allies have begun limiting their interactions, fearing shared knowledge will be used for destructive purposes. The crystal gardens show signs of stress, with some plants developing anomalous colorations, reflecting growing energetic imbalance in the city. The very plants are reacting to spiritual deterioration of their caregivers, demonstrating how deeply interconnected Atlantis's life network is. In temples, some sacred crystals have begun developing cracks or losing their natural glow. The very instruments of Atlantean spirituality are being affected by changing consciousness of those operating them, as if precious stones were allergic to greed and ambition. Reports arrive of Atlantean military expeditions attacking and subjugating peoples in distant lands, something that would have been unthinkable in previous generations. These campaigns are justified as civilizing missions, but in reality are motivated by desire to expand the Atlantean Empire. The wisest ancient elders have increasingly retreated to outer temples, refusing to participate in a society betraying its fundamental principles. Their departures leave the field clear for less wise leaders to implement policies prioritizing power over harmony. In crystalline libraries, prophetic records glow with alarming intensity, showing increasingly clear visions of imminent destruction. But these prophecies are being reclassified as sensitive information and kept from public knowledge. A new philosophy is spreading among certain Atlantean circles. The idea that their technological and spiritual superiority makes them practically gods with right to govern all humanity. This hubris represents complete inversion of original teachings about humility and service. As you witness these disturbing changes, you begin to understand that even history's most advanced civilization is vulnerable to corruption when it loses connection with its fundamental spiritual values. The wind brings news that makes city crystals tremble with discordant frequencies. Atlantis has declared war against the city-state of Athens and its confederations. This isn't a defensive war or even a common territorial dispute. It's a conquest campaign motivated by new Atlantean philosophy of supremacy and global domination. The military preparations you witness are simultaneously magnificent and terrifying. Crystals that for millennia were used exclusively for healing and spiritual growth are being recalibrated as weapons of war. Towers that once channeled cosmic energy for illumination now focus that same energy into beams capable of vaporizing entire armies. Atlantean ships once used only for peaceful exploration and cultural exchange now sail loaded with soldiers and crystalline armaments toward Mediterranean coasts. These vessels can travel both over and under waters, approaching enemy cities in ways their conventional defenses cannot detect or repel. Quirky tidbit: Atlantean generals developed tactics taking advantage of their unique technologies. Soldiers who can teleport through crystal portals, weapons functioning by tuning to enemies' specific frequencies, and energy shields practically impenetrable by conventional weapons. You witness embarkation of legions of Atlantean soldiers, whose armor is made of interwoven crystals that not only protect them physically, but also amplify their mental and physical capacities. Each soldier becomes a superhuman warrior, capable of feats seeming magical to less advanced enemies' eyes. Official justifications for war sound noble on surface, Atlantis claims to be bringing civilization and superior order to barbaric Mediterranean peoples. But those with developed spiritual perception can see through this rhetoric and perceive true motivations of greed and power lust. Athens, which will be Atlantis's main adversary, represents everything Atlantean civilization used to value: democracy based on citizen participation, philosophy seeking wisdom through questioning, and art celebrating both beauty and truth. Ironically, Athenians are now defending values Atlanteans abandoned. War's first phase demonstrates crushing superiority of Atlantean technology. Entire cities are subjugated in a matter of days through power demonstrations seeming like divine interventions to defenders' eyes. Impenetrable walls are dissolved by crystalline frequencies, armies are paralyzed by energy fields, and fortresses float in air before being gently deposited where they can no longer serve as defenses. But as war progresses, something unexpected begins happening. The gods begin actively intervening in conflict, not favoring Atlantis as its leaders expected, but defending Athens and its allies. Zeus, Athena, Poseidon, and other divinities begin manifesting their displeasure with direction Atlantean civilization has taken. First signs of divine intervention are subtle, storms appearing from nowhere to destroy Atlantean fleets, earthquakes opening fissures precisely under military camps, and plagues affecting only invading soldiers while completely sparing local populations. As war intensifies, Atlantean crystals themselves begin behaving erratically. Weapons that worked perfectly in Atlantis mysteriously fail when used for unjustified aggression. It's as if crystalline consciousness itself were rejecting being used for purposes violating fundamental cosmic laws. Joke number 1. If modern public relations consultants had been available to Atlantean leaders, they probably would have suggested a more subtle marketing campaign than "let's conquer the world because we're better than everyone else." In Atlantis' temples, wisest priests begin receiving increasingly alarming prophetic visions. The gods themselves appear in devotees' dreams, warning that Atlantean civilization will be completely destroyed if it doesn't immediately cease its imperial ambitions and return to spiritual principles that founded it. But these divine warnings are ignored by military and political leadership, which interprets them as attempts by lesser gods of other cultures to intimidate the superior Atlantean race. This hubris represents the point of no return in civilization's spiritual degradation. War against Athens becomes symbol of Atlantis' tragic transformation. A civilization that once channeled divine power to create beauty and promote spiritual growth now uses that same power to subjugate and dominate other human beings. The contrast couldn't be more dramatic or more condemning. Reports arrive from battlefronts describing horrors never before seen on Earth. Soldiers completely vaporized by crystalline rays, entire landscapes transformed into molten glass, and civilian populations fleeing in terror from powers transcending their understanding. Ironically, Atlantis' own military successes accelerate its spiritual destruction. Each easy victory confirms in Atlantean leaders' minds their racial superiority and divine right to govern other peoples. This arrogance blinds them to growing signs that cosmic forces are aligning against them. In Atlantis' streets, a growing minority of citizens begins questioning war's morality. These dissidents are quickly silenced by a new class of crystalline police who can detect treasonous thoughts. Through psychic scanners, a sinister application of technologies originally developed for mental healing. Atlantean society is transforming into military theocracy, where questioning war or expressing compassion for enemies is considered heresy against a sacred mission of civilizing the world. This complete perversion of original Atlantean values, marks final stage of civilizational decadence. As you witness these terrifying developments, you begin to perceive that Atlantis is repeating a pattern that has repeated throughout galactic history. Advanced civilizations that become corrupted through power and are finally destroyed by the very forces that elevated them. As months of war pass and Atlantean victories accumulate, nature itself begins reacting violently against energetic imbalances created by destructive use of sacred technologies. What you witness aren't just extreme meteorological phenomena, but conscious revolt of the planet against a civilization that betrayed its original harmony. Master crystals throughout Atlantis begin emitting discordant frequencies, creating planetary resonance that disturbs global climate patterns. Storms of impossible intensity sweep previously calm oceans, while earthquakes shake regions that were geologically stable for millennia. Plants in sacred gardens begin withering despite all technological care, as if they were consciously rejecting any association with a civilization that lost its soul. Trees that lived for thousands of years begin dying, and flowers that once glowed with their own light become opaque and lifeless. Quirky tidbit: Atlantean domestic animals, who for generations maintained telepathic communication with their human companions, begin distancing themselves and even attacking their former friends. It's as if they could perceive spiritual corruption and instinctively knew they needed to distance themselves. In the Great Crystal Temple, the master crystal powering entire civilization begins pulsing erratically, alternating between blinding brightness and total darkness. The most experienced crystal technicians admit in whispers they've never seen similar behavior. It's as if Atlantis' own technological heart were having a nervous breakdown. Oceans around the island begin showing anomalous behaviors. Giant waves surge from nowhere on perfectly calm days, while underwater currents change direction without apparent reason. Whales and dolphins, who for millennia maintained friendly communication with Atlanteans, now flee in terror whenever vessels approach. In crystalline libraries, prophetic crystals are glowing with such intensity they become painful to observe directly. All records point to the same inevitable conclusion. Total destruction is approaching rapidly, and there's no longer possibility of avoiding it. The few wise priests still having access to main temples report apocalyptic visions where they see Atlantis being swallowed by waters in a single night. In these visions, ocean gods themselves rise to reclaim a civilization that lost the right to exist. Joke number 2. If modern crisis management consultants had been called to help Atlantis at this moment, they probably would have suggested a 3-point strategy: stop the war, apologize to the gods, and perhaps consider moving to a continent with better geological stability. Impossible atmospheric phenomena begin occurring over the island. Northern lights at tropical latitudes, rain falling upward instead of down, and clouds forming geometric patterns clearly transmitting warning messages. The very sky is trying to communicate with a civilization that became deaf to nature's voices. Sacred springs that always provided purified water for an entire city begin producing liquids with strange colors and properties. Some waters become heavy like mercury, others bubble with luminous gases, and certain springs begin spouting salt water despite their sources being at island's center. Atlantis's very buildings begin showing signs of accelerated deterioration. Marble that resisted millennia without showing a scratch develops cracks overnight. Architectural crystals providing natural illumination begin darkening, and some towers begin tilting as if the soil itself were rejecting their weight. At island's periphery, deep fissures begin opening in ground, releasing vapors, smelling of sulfur, and making ominous reminders of mythological descriptions of underworld. Seawater begins infiltrating through these cracks, creating saline pools where once flourishing gardens existed. Technicians responsible for crystalline energy networks report systemic cascading failures they can't explain or fix. It's as if all Atlantis's technological infrastructure were being sabotaged by invisible intelligence perfectly understanding how to deactivate systems that took millennia to develop. Even interplanetary communication crystals stop functioning, cutting Atlantis from its cosmic connections precisely when advice from wiser civilizations would be most needed. It's as if the universe itself were imposing quarantine on a civilization that became dangerous to itself and others. In hospitals, a new disease category begins appearing: spiritual disintegration, a condition where patients literally begin losing energy coherence, as if their souls were disconnecting from physical bodies. Most experienced healers admit they've never seen anything similar. As you observe these apocalyptic signs accumulating, inevitable realization becomes clear. Atlantis isn't just facing natural disasters, but final judgment from cosmic forces that won't permit a corrupted civilization to continue existing. It's Atlantis's last night, though most of its inhabitants still don't know. The sun sets through an atmosphere charged with static electricity, painting the sky in red and gold tones, seeming prophetic of approaching destruction. You can feel tension in the air, making each breath seem heavier, more loaded with consequences. In governmental councils, Atlantean leaders are still planning additional military expansions, blind to obvious signs that forces far beyond their control are mobilizing against them. Reports of strange phenomena are dismissed as coincidences or enemy propaganda. Denial that would be comic, if not so tragic. But in outer temples, Atlantis's last true priests are performing desperate expiation rituals, trying until the last moment to appease divine wrath through offerings, prayers, and promises of spiritual reform. Their sacred crystals glow with trembling light, reflecting their own uncertainty about whether there's still time for salvation. Quirky tidbit: some of Atlantis's wisest inhabitants spent this last night not in despair, but in deep meditation, consciously preparing for transition they know is coming. They see imminent destruction not as tragedy, but as part of inevitable cosmic cycles of death and rebirth. In ocean depths around Atlantis, Poseidon is preparing to reclaim his island. The sea god, who once blessed civilization through union with mortal woman, now feels only sadness and need for correction, facing corruption of his descendants. Waters begin agitating in ways defying all known oceanographic laws. Circular waves propagate from specific points in ocean, as if gigantic masses were moving in abyssal depths. Marine creatures never seen in surface waters begin emerging, beings seeming awakened from millennial slumbers. Inside the city, few citizens with developed spiritual perception feel divine presence approaching, not loving energy, characterizing past divine blessings, but inexorable judgment force coming to execute cosmic justice. Master crystals throughout city begin emitting sounds, audible frequencies they never produced before, as if singing elegy for civilization they nourished so long. These crystalline sounds create phantasmagorical harmonies echoing through empty streets. Animals throughout island begin presenting instinctive flight behaviors, as if their primitive senses detected dangers Atlantean technology can't register. Birds fly in disoriented circles, fish leap from waters trying to escape something terrible in depths, and even insects seem agitated. In final hours before dawn, time's very structure seems to distort around Atlantis. Moments stretch like hours, while hours pass like seconds. It's as if reality were preparing for fundamental change requiring adjustments in temporal experience's very nature. Joke number 3. If modern news reporters had been present to cover Atlantis's final events, they probably would have spent all night trying to decide whether story headlines should be "Lost, Civilization Ignores Obvious Destruction Signs," or "Gods Implement History's Most Radical Urban Renewal Plan." Few sages still having access to prophetic records spend these final hours encoding essential knowledge in special crystals programmed to bury themselves in Earth's depths and emerge in future times. When humanity is ready to receive Atlantean wisdom again, these time crystals contain not just technical information, but also spiritual teachings that allowed Atlantis to flourish before its fall. Its final attempt to ensure lessons learned through this tragedy won't be lost forever. In waters around island, impossibly intense underwater lights begin appearing, not Atlantean lights, but bioluminescence from gigantic marine creatures unseen for eons. Poseidon is summoning ocean's most ancient guardians to witness an era's end. As night advances, supernatural calm descends over Atlantis, not peace of spiritual harmony characterizing civilization at its peak, but quietude preceding cataclysmic storms. It's as if all nature were holding its breath before event that will change terrestrial history's course. In final moments before dawn, some Atlanteans report visions of Poseidon in person, not as benevolent god who blessed their ancestors, but as cosmic judgment force, whose sadness at his descendants' corruption transformed into determination to end a failed experiment. The last act of this extraordinary civilization is about to begin, and not even Atlantis's most powerful crystals can alter destiny sealed by conscious choice to trade wisdom for power. Dawn will never come for Atlantis. In hours before what should be sunrise, forces sleeping in oceanic depths for eons awaken completely. Poseidon, in his most primordial and terrible form, rises from abysses to execute final judgment on a civilization that lost its soul. First sign is absolute silence, descending over entire island. Not even breathing sound can be heard, as if very air were being aspirated by invisible force. This silence lasts only seconds, but seems to extend for eternity for those experiencing it. Then, the sea begins receding, not gradually, but in massive and sudden retreat, exposing kilometers of ocean floor around island. Marine creatures are left exposed, desperately flapping in rarefied air, while Atlantean ships are stranded on ground that seconds before was under hundreds of meters of water. This water retreat isn't natural, it's Poseidon gathering all oceanic force into single wave that will be high enough to completely swallow an entire civilization. In exposed depths, gigantic forms can be glimpsed moving servants of sea god, creatures of unimaginable size and power. Quirky tidbit. In final moments before final wave, some Atlantean crystals begin transmitting automatic messages in all Earth languages, trying to preserve at least fragments of knowledge for future civilizations, as if even precious stones knew they were witnessing an era's end. The approaching wave isn't made just of water, but of materialized divine force. A liquid wall rising to impossible heights, glowing with its own light revealing Poseidon's direct presence within it. It's not just physical destruction, but spiritual purification on cosmic scale. In final moments, some Atlanteans manage to activate last teleportation portals, scattering survivors to distant locations around world. These refugees will carry fragments of Atlantean wisdom, seeding legends and knowledge that will influence future civilizations for millennia. Wave's impact against Atlantis isn't violent, but absolute. History's most advanced civilization simply disappears under waters, as if it never existed. Each building, each garden, each sacred crystal being gently reclaimed by ocean that nurtured them. But this isn't destruction from anger, but from divine love. Poseidon is liberating a civilization from weight of its own corruption, allowing its essential energies to return to cosmic ocean of infinite potential from which they originally emerged. Final joke. If modern geologists could have witnessed Atlantis' submersion, they probably would have spent next 1,000 years trying to develop theories about how entire landmass can disappear overnight without leaving any traces, detectable by scientific equipment. As waters stabilize over location where Atlantis existed, deep calm descends over oceans. Judgment has been executed, correction completed, and cosmic cycle can continue. On seafloor, Atlantean crystals slowly begin burying themselves in geological layers, waiting for appropriate moment to emerge again. In oceanic depths, Atlantean wisdom didn't die, it simply entered hibernation phase, preserved in underwater crystalline networks, until humanity develops again spiritual maturity necessary to handle such power without becoming corrupted. And thus ends the lost legend of Atlantis, not with explosions or violence, but with gentle return of civilization to primordial waters from which it emerged. Ocean preserves all things, and in its depths, Atlantis' dreams continue alive, waiting for a right moment to inspire a new era of wisdom and harmony. As you gently float back to present, carrying with you memories of this journey through history's most magnificent lost civilization, you can feel how these images and sensations integrate smoothly into your impending dreams. Atlantis' story isn't just about ancient civilization, it's about eternal cycles of growth and decline, wisdom and corruption, creation and destruction repeating at all scales of existence. In each of us exists seeds of both Atlantean greatness and its tragic fall. Perhaps, in tonight's dreams, you'll visit crystal gardens again, feel perfumed breeze of Atlantean oceans, or hear echoes of music that once filled its streets with light. And perhaps, upon awakening, you'll carry with you some of wisdom learned about delicate balance between power and responsibility. Ocean still whispers Atlantis' secrets to those who know how to listen. In waves gently breaking on beaches, in deep currents circulating through seas, and in crystals occasionally emerging from depths, memory of this extraordinary civilization continues alive. Rest well, dear listeners, and may your dreams be blessed with visions of harmony between technology and spirituality, power and compassion, ambition and wisdom. Atlantis' legend lives in each of us, waiting for a right moment to inspire a new era of enlightenment. Good night, and may eternal waters carry you gently to dream realms where all possibilities still exist. This sleep story about Atlantis' lost legend was created to transport you through 2 hours of relaxing narrative, exploring one of human mythology's most fascinating civilizations through rich sensory descriptions, historical curiosities, and eternal wisdom emerging when technology and spirituality dance in perfect harmony.